The movie opens with a high school student, Patty Bladell, who is constantly bullied for being overweight and is nicknamed Fatty Patty. She narrates herself as one of the girls who spends most of the time at home, while the other girls of her age are out losing their virginity. Patty does have a crush on her handsome classmate, Brick Armstrong, but she doesn't have the guts to ask him out. She does, however, have the common sense. On the other hand, we are introduced to Brick's father, Bob Armstrong, a local civil rights lawyer who also coaches beauty pageant contestants. One fine day at work, Bob is seen coaching a teen named Dixie, who is a bit immature when it comes to politics. Her immaturity causes her to lose the beauty competition, which enrages her mother, Regina. She then threatens Bob to return her money, which the latter refuses. As a result, she walks up to the stage and accuses him of molesting her daughter, shocking everyone. This incident causes him to be disgraced, which results in his career taking a downturn, as nobody wants to work with him anymore. One day, Patty and her best friend Nani go to a convenience store where they coincidentally spot Brick. Despite Patty's hesitance, Nani approaches Brick on her behalf and asks him out for a date. However, the latter turns down the proposal and walks away from there. Later, the heartbroken Patty is sitting outside the store when she is approached by a homeless man who insults her weight. In a fit of rage, she punches him in the face, only to get punched back, causing her to end up in the hospital with a broken jaw. 3 months later, we see Patty, who has lost a lot of weight thanks to a liquid diet in the hospital. As a result, she is now thin and beautiful, with confidence like never before. However, there is a problem. She is being prosecuted for assaulting the homeless man. In order to handle their case pro bono, Patty and her mother try to approach several lawyers, but no one seems to be willing to take their case. Eventually, they enlist the help of Bob, who accepts the case after being jobless for more than 3 months. In the next scene, Bob visits Patty's house to gather some details regarding the case, but she isn't home. As a result, he talks to her mother, Angie, who briefs him about the incident. She also shows him the pictures of Patty, who used to be fat at that time. Bob doesn't appear to be much interested in the case, so he simply decides to go with the plea agreement strategy. But once he meets Patty, he is so mesmerized by her beauty that he ditches his earlier idea and plans to argue self-defense. He then begins training for the court and also helps her improve her appearance to look more innocent. Moreover, Patty also seduces the cashier from the store, Donald, who is the only witness of the incident. Meanwhile, Regina, who is jealous of Bob getting a job, hires a spy to tail him so that she can defame him again. One evening, the beauty contest winner named Magnolia summons Bob to her place in order to help her finalize a dress. During this, the girl changes her clothes in front of Bob, making him feel uneasy. Unbeknownst to them, this moment is captured by the spy, who sends the picture to Regina. On the day of the trial, Donald, as expected, claims to have no recollection of the incident. Patty then successfully convinces the judge that her actions were in self-defense, finally securing a victory over the case. Despite this, she is not satisfied yet, as she wants revenge against all of those who have ever been mean to her. Bob tells her that the best revenge is a life well lived. He then suggests that she participate in the beauty pageant because a stunning girl like her can have her shot as the next Miss USA. However, Angie opposes the idea, concerned about the potential sexualization and objectification of her daughter. Later on, Patty and Nani join Angie's Alcoholics Anonymous support meeting, where they unexpectedly meet John, the same homeless man who previously punched Patty. Fueled by anger, she decides to seek revenge by making him fall in love with her and then rejecting him. Following this, she approaches him and takes him to a hotel room with the intention of seducing him. However, the man gets so drunk that he falls asleep without doing anything. Infuriated that she lost her chance, she grabs an alcohol bottle and pours it in the bed with the intention of burning it all down. But at the same time, she recalls Bob's earlier suggestion about the beauty pageants, so she promptly calls him and says she's interested, despite her mother's disapproval. The next morning, Patty wakes up with no memory of the drunken night that has passed. She plans to skip school because she is still not ready to face the bullies. She goes to Bob and requests that he start training her for the beauty pageant. However, he urges her to attend school first, as it is also important for her personality development. Following this, Patty arrives at school, but her classmates don't recognize her due to her transformed appearance. She now decides to use her newfound beauty to exact revenge on those who tormented her, and sets her first target on her former crush, Brick. However, Magnolia intervenes and warns her to stay away from Brick, asserting that he is her boyfriend. Later, in Spanish Spanish class, Patty learns the news of a man's critical condition following a hotel fire, the same place where she was last night. Fearing that she might be responsible, she confides the incident in her best friend, who then leaves the school to investigate. Nani arrives at the hospital, where she finds the homeless guy being treated. Just then, she is approached by her cop father, who is coincidentally in charge of the case. She asks him about the culprit, but all he can say is that the homeless guy was with a girl. In the meantime, Patty is having lunch alone in the school cafeteria when she's approached by a new hot student, Christian. Patty is immediately attracted to him, but before she can talk to him, she receives a text from Nani confirming her suspicion. In a state of panic, Patty calls Bob and confides everything in him. Bob, who sees Patty as his only chance to return to the pageant world, vows to prove her innocence. While he investigates the hotel room, Patty and Nani visit Donald to retrace the events of the previous night. Turns out that Patty had visited his store that night to buy some snacks. He discloses that she was so drunk that she flashed him and wasn't wearing a bra. Hearing this, she recalls that she had left her bra in the hotel room. Realizing that she might be caught due to this evidence, Patty uses Nani's police connection to sneak into the evidence room to get her bra back. Shortly after, Bob calls her to inform that stealing the evidence isn't sufficient, emphasizing the need for a solid alibi as witnesses saw her with John during check-in. Patty and Nani then return to Donald, seeking assistance in manipulating the security footage from the previous night. They decide to reenact the events in order to make a new tape. For this, they proceed to make Patty heavily drunk. However, their plan becomes a total failure when Patty becomes excessively drunk and collapses. She ends up in the same hospital where John is receiving treatment. At this point, another shocking revelation unfolds. Regina, who had accused Bob of molesting her daughter, is having a secret affair with his underage son, Brick. In the next scene, Bob visits the hospital to check on the homeless man, but is astonished to find Patty wandering the halls. He hastily advises her to stay in her room to avoid being recognized by John. Despite this warning, the mischievous Patty peeks into John's room and gets caught in the process. Thankfully, at the same time, Bob manages to figure out the entire situation and begins explaining. According to him, John woke up that night and ignited a matchstick to light his cigarette, which caused the fire, but he blamed Patty in order to exonerate himself. To everyone's surprise, John confirms this account, making everyone happy. Before departing from the hospital, Patty confronts John one last time to reveal that she's the same fat girl whom he had previously assaulted. She then expresses a wish for his death, and miraculously, John succumbs to a heart attack, bringing a sense of satisfaction to Patty. What the hell is the moral of this story? A few days later, Bob decides to take Patty to the Miss Bareback Buckaroo pageant in Alabama in order to visit his former mentor, Stella Rose Buckley. Here, we learn that it was Stella who helped him enter the world of pageant coaching in the late 90s. Bob's wife, Cora Lee, isn't on board with his decision, as she believes it is a risky move due to the previous accusation. However, Bob stresses the necessity of this move, asserting that Patty is his only client capable of restoring his tarnished reputation in the pageant industry. After packing up her belongings, the excited Patty arrives at Bob's house, and the two set off towards Alabama. After a long and joyful drive, they reach the Miss Bareback Buckaroo pageant, where they are received by Stella. Upon introducing one another, Stella instructs her student Roxy to escort Patty to the hotel room, while she talks to Bob. During their conversation, Bob mentions Patty's high potential to become Miss USA, but he's struggling to coach her properly due to her mischievous behavior. Hearing this, Stella advises him to be more stringent in his approach, just like she is with her students. On the other hand, Nani, who is concerned about her best friend, approaches Donald at the convenience store and requests that he accompany her to Alabama. Dixie, who happens to be in the same store, overhears their conversation and decides to tag along, as she seems to have some unfinished business with Bob. The trio then hits the road, making their way to Alabama in Dixie's Jeep. Meanwhile, Cora Lee plans a dinner party at a residence to invite her affluent friends. However, her plans are thwarted by an unwelcome visit from her trailer trash sister, Brando Lane, and her kids, forcing her to cancel the dinner plan. Back in Alabama, Bob and Stella team up to train Patty on how to walk and how to behave. Throughout the training session, Bob assigns her with various chores as a part of the training, which she reluctantly complies with. At one point, he leaves Patty alone to train, which Stella sees as a perfect opportunity to manipulate the girl. She then attempts to sway Patty to her side by highlighting negative aspects of Bob. She asserts that he's exploiting her for self-benefit and will eventually abandon her, just like he did to her her 20 years ago. Turns out that Stella is intending to seek revenge against Bob for leaving her heartbroken in the past. Unbeknownst to them, Bob is eavesdropping on their conversation from a distance. Before Stella can brainwash her further, he steps in and takes her away. After this, the two head to a restaurant for lunch, and by this point, Patty starts harboring suspicions about Bob. As they converse, she complains about not learning anything related to the beauty pageant. In an effort to prove her wrong, Bob instructs her to do a ramp walk. To Patty's surprise, she realizes that all the chores he assigned her were indeed part of her training, significantly improving her walk now. Bob is like Mr. Miyagi, bikini wax on, bikini wax off. This changes her perception of Bob, and she begins developing romantic feelings for him, despite being aware of his marital status. Later that day, Bob confronts Stella about what he overheard earlier. Evading the topic, she talks about how much she missed him after he left. She also expresses that she still loves him and tries to kiss him. However, Bob, who feels very uneasy, flees the scene. He returns back to her room, only to be startled by Patty, who also tries to seduce him. Frustrated by everything he's going through, he throws her out of his room, seeking some time alone. Devastated, Patty then goes to a bar with Stella and Roxy for some drinks. Amidst this, Stella clicks a selfie with Patty and secretly sends it to Bob, raising his concern. As a result, he hastily gets in his car and rushes to the bar. Meanwhile, Patty happens to see Stella's message on her phone, which makes her realize that both she and Bob are just using her. Upset by the betrayals, she opts to enter a crawfish eating contest, contemplating giving up on her diet. Midway through the contest, Bob arrives and tries to stop her from eating more. However, she refuses to listen and continues eating. Bob then admits that he was once overweight like her, so he genuinely empathizes with her struggle. Still suspicious, Patty tells him to prove it by eating the crawdads and winning the contest. Determined to earn her trust, Bob begins eating and eventually wins the competition. This pivotal moment finally bridges the gap between the two of them, and Patty promises to do anything he says. In the aftermath, Bob confronts Stella, who ultimately reveals that she has been coaching Roxy for Miss USA. Now that she knows everything about Patty's vulnerabilities, including her feelings for Bob, she vows to defeat him and lead Roxy to victory. Before departing, she gives Patty an engraved necklace that Bob gave to her as proof of their affair, saying, "You know what to do." Patty soon realizes that this necklace is a weapon to break Bob's marriage and gain full control over him.